I'm Raymond, and this year marks my 28th birthday. I am employed in sales for a reputable large company. I believe that I perform rather well in sales. This is a result of my hard work at work, as I have never really worked hard at anything else. My father departed due to a divorce when I was too little to remember him, and my mother passed away last year. But ever since my mom passed away, I've been lacking motivation in all aspects of my life, including work. I feel like I'm merely going through the motions at work every day. Something happened after my girlfriend and I broke up. Raymond, the section head wants to see you in the office. The clerk called to me as soon as I got back from an appointment outdoors. I've never had a good relationship with the department head, mostly because he doesn't understand that I lack motivation. Even though I was the top contract maker last month, it appears he doesn't like it. Dealing with him is a headache since he picks disputes over the most insignificant things. This is Raymond. Could I please enter? I went to the manager's office and knocked on the door. The head of the section and the manager gave me a harsh look. Can you explain what this is about? I was working on an annual contract with a major client when the department head put it in front of me. I had just delegated the task to a junior team member at the team leader's request. Put another way, it was an undertaking that was beyond of my control. Why would you give this to a junior student in such a half-finished state? That is careless. The section head began yelling at me as I was considering what was going on. He believes he can achieve what he wants by threatening and screaming at me. It's obvious that the department leader, who appears to be misinformed, wants to place all the responsibility for this failure on me. All he's saying is negative things about me. After the contract went from me to the junior, I believe the section head likely wanted to take credit for it as his own achievement. The junior came to me the other day and told me he felt that his job had been stolen, which is proof of this. If it worked, it would be to his credit. If not, he could get rid of me, which would be a pain in his side. Very sly. I remained silent as my boss proceeded to chastise me. The manager did nothing but observe. Finally, he gave me my notice of transfer. You're being transferred. Demotion to a client-centered factory was the new task. I accepted the notice without question since I was so exhausted. After that, I looked up the location of my transfer and said, Alaska. There, is it not freezing? My remark caused the manager's veins to burst in his forehead and ended the stillness. Is that all you have to say? The manager then gave me an hour and a half of lectures. Man, this time of year, being seconded. How on earth did you accomplish that? When the factory manager came to see me, he laughed and said this while carrying the transfer notification. I mean, it was a strange time for a transfer. Anyone would think I did something wrong. The factory where I was posted was in the suburbs of Anchorage, Alaska. Being from Los Angeles, I detest the cold. It's freezing for me, even though it's the south of Alaska. There was no trace of summer at all, even though it was almost here. I'm excited to collaborate with you. I've been informed that I will oversee general affairs. Since I have experience in sales, I rely on your direction and rigorous education. Everyone applauded warmly as I bowed deeply and entered the office. I recall that when they responded, I felt relieved and my shoulders relaxed. I was given a room in an old apartment complex as company housing. I've heard that a large number of workers and students who are away from home reside here. The room next to me was occupied by a young man. I suppose he's quite the player since even though we've just said hello a few times, he always appears to be with a different woman. Perched on a hill, the apartment offers a distant view of the sea. The city lights are stunning at night, and my favorite thing to do after work is open a can of beer and enjoy the view from the balcony. I saw a few kids with paper lanterns in their hands today as I made my way back up the hill to the apartment. It was that fleeting moment in the day between dusk and dawn. I had the impression that I had entered a new dimension. It wasn't until I saw a big bamboo decoration in the daycare's playground halfway up the hill that I realized it was July 7, the day of the Star Festival. The kids are presumably attending a festival. I opened the door to my apartment, thinking that. I undid my necktie and went straight to the refrigerator to get a can of beer. I immediately stepped outside to the balcony and uncorked the drink. On the slope, paper lanterns were swaying in different directions. The children singing caught my attention as they sang about tassels on bamboo. It's the Star Festival. It had an odd vibe to it and sounded like a kid's song I've never heard before. It's not that horrible to learn little by little about the unknown parts of our region. That was the first time I had thought like that since my transfer. Someone was knocking on my door at that very moment. Nobody in this place knew me well enough to come see me. Without checking the intercom, I opened the door, assuming it was the landlord or the factory manager. A beautiful woman dressed in a robe stood in front of the door. She carried a paper lantern and was dressed in a robe of white and blue. She looked down shyly and sung in a soft, hesitant voice the song the kids had been singing before. For the Star Festival, bamboo, let's rejoice. Please, I need a candle. She buried her face in my chest and put her arms around my neck the next second. I hope she'll pardon me for putting my arms around her waist out of impulse when I'm hugged by a stunning woman in a robe that I just met. I'm shocked when she says, I want more than just a candle. I want your best, in a somewhat sultry voice. She's not someone I know, though, I assure you. I had to say something for her honor, and I said, I think you've got the wrong guy. I hope she'll forgive me for speaking louder than I meant to, but I was scared too. Aren't you, Jack? She looked up at me, actually seeing at my face for the first time, startled by my voice. Well, not at all. My name is Raymond, I said with a sardonic grin. It seems that she thought I was her boyfriend. In an instant, her face flushed beet red. I could see her long eyelashes trembling around her wide-open eyes up close. I apologize so much. It appears that I made a mistake, she said, pulling away from me in a hurry. At that precise moment, the door from the adjoining room opened, revealing a happy pair, with the young woman referring to the man as Jack. I realized then what was going on. The sight of the two of us froze the beauty in a robe. The man turned to face us, and she ducked into the front door of my flat to avoid his stare. She pushed me, and I crashed back against my front door. How strange fate is. I was knocked down and imprisoned by a stunning person at the entrance. I waited in silence as the noise of footsteps from the other room subsided in this state. The last pair's footsteps were eventually drowned out by the sound of an elevator door opening and the pitter-patter of tiny feet. I questioned her, softly pulling off her body. Are you okay? With a stunned expression, the stunning woman in her robe withdrew from me and took a seat. Her side profile was lovely, but a little depressing. I apologize. In addition to making a mistake, I also started this annoyance. I truly wanted to take him by surprise. She apologized to me, lowering her head and gripping her robe tightly. One tear fell to the back of her tightly closed fist. I went to stroke her shoulder in an attempt to console her. But at that moment, the partially open front door flew open. Star wishes on bamboo in honor of the Star Festival. Let's rejoice. Please give me a candle. Children dressed in robes were standing there, singing a joyful song and each holding a lantern. They extended their arms. All right, exclaimed the stunning woman dressed in a robe. She took out sweets from a plastic bag she carried and started giving them to the children. The kids gleefully rushed off toward the next house, carrying candies. It was uncannily similar to Halloween, and I watched the spectacle play out in silence. Is this something like trick or treat? I inquired with the attractive woman wearing a robe who was dropping off the kids. The robed beauty gave me a startled glance. She then spoke softly, as though knowing, You're not from around here. This is a gathering for candles. Kids wander around houses like this on the day of the Star Festival in order to collect candy. The kids appear to be more interested in candies these days. but it seems like they used to really get candles back in the day. She held out her hand to me as she spoke. I was able to stand at last, thanks to her support. I feel ashamed. I try my hardest, but it didn't work out, she remarked, appearing somewhat relieved. I made an attempt because I've been told since high school that I'm not cute. Rather silly, The attractive woman in a robe appeared to be a neighbor I knew a little bit. I reasoned that perhaps he might pick me among the other women. I'd wanted to console her since I was feeling down, but I was at a loss for words. She smiled slightly at me while I remained silent. She then repeatedly apologized to me and gave me a gift of a mound of candies. I ought to have gotten her name. With a gentle chime, the elevator doors closed, and I was a little regretful. A week later, I saw the beautiful woman in a robe once more, this time at the manufacturing office. I didn't recognize her at first as she had changed so much in appearance. She introduced herself as, "I'm Alice Mitchell, the consulting attorney," as she put on her elegantly tailored black suit. The subtle yet expertly applied makeup looked great on her. Her lips were painted a delicate beige, but they were a charming pink when she wore a robe. "Thank you for the other day." When she whispered in a voice only I could hear, I had to look twice. She appears to be this factory's legal advisor. The plant manager says she's a very competent female lawyer who operates a law office close to the company residences. Alice approached me, startled by the sudden reunion, and said, "I wanted to apologize for the other day." You already know our friend," I replied. "Alice, pay attention. Alice has never been lucky when it comes to guys. She recently developed feelings for a young man. Having known Alice since she was a young child, the factory manager began to spread rumors about her personal life. Alice covered the manager's mouth with her palm in a panic to silence him. "You don't have to talk about that." Alice pouted at the manager of the plant, looking rather like a little child. She offered to apologize, and I chose to accept it. We decided to meet for supper and trade phone numbers. I realized that since coming here, I had never exchanged personal contact information before. I want to giggle thinking about our first meeting. I think she noticed that on my face. Alice, who was talking about her job, shot me a quick glance and said, "Don't." I shot her a sidelong glance of guilt. My heart was beating very strongly, and it felt like we were talking in private. Later, I got into a fight with Alice over food. It was a pleasant mood at first. Everything was going well until we had a little wine at this lovely Western restaurant on the harbor. I believe we were both feeling tipsy as the dinner was coming to a conclusion. I am not a good drinker. Although I don't think I have a nasty temperament when I'm intoxicated, I do have a tendency to express my genuine emotions a little. "Do you like younger men?" I asked Alice that out of the blue when she informed me she had split up with that man. The air around our table seemed to cool off by 2 degrees for a brief period of time. In spite of my impolite inquiry, Alice smiled maturely. What a rude man to ask something like that. She set her wine glass down on the surface. Our relationship's affected by age. However, isn't the man who lives next door a college student? Are you about 35 years old? Isn't that a little hazardous, Alice? I ran into the neighbor in the elevator the day following the disturbance, and we spoke briefly. The news that he was still a college student astonished me. Alice corrected me about her age. "I'm only 32, her voice trembling. "Are you serious? For a college student, there really isn't much of a difference between 35 and 32. It may look that both ages are old hags. It's true that alcohol can be frightening. I believe that at the moment I was merely attempting to get her attention. I kept pushing her boundaries with my remarks. It doesn't really help to regret it when you're sober, does it? I'm an old hag, but there's a big difference between 32 and 35. What in what way? Alice lost patience at that point. She glared at me as she got up from her chair. If you round up, there's a big difference between 30 and 40, you idiot. That's the point where my recollection stops. It seems like someone whacked me over the head with a baguette. I discovered the hard way that evening that even tough bread may be lethal. Alice has been ignoring me ever since that evening. She works at a legal office next to my apartment complex, and whenever she sees me on her way back, she turns to avoid eye contact. I'm trying to find the appropriate occasion to offer apologies, but I'm having trouble. I learned that my old main office coworkers were going to Anchorage around 6 months after I was moved to the plant. I was approached by an old coworker who proposed a meeting. It seems like they intended to come to this factory. I was excited to see my old coworkers, but my excitement was somewhat dashed when I learned that the former manager would also be there. The main office group arrived in Anchorage for their vacation a few days later. They also visited our factory, one of their suppliers, for a tour. It was good to see my former coworkers again, unaltered, and even solicited for advice regarding their jobs. I generally simply handled factory attendance, so everyone at the office was shocked to see me offering the elite guidance from the main office. "Hey Raymond, you're remarkably trustworthy. Why were you moved to this location?" I was graciously brought some Misty by the manufacturing manager. I gave a hazy response, saying that there were several reasons why things eventually cooled down. That day, Alice was also at work, and I could feel her watchful eyes. "Hey Raymond, come here." My former manager was the one who was so haughtily summoning me over. At the office door, he was waving at me. I sighed heavily and rose to follow his urging. "A long time has passed. I appreciate you being there the other day." A salutation with a tinge of irony. The former head of the section put on a pouting expression. It seems that he knew what he was doing. "You haven't told anyone, right?" In response to the manager's remarks, I gave a nod. The division head called me in and said the same thing when I was reassigned here and left the main office. I became tired of him always blaming me for turning the client over to my junior, even though it could have been his fault in the end. "Maybe you didn't remember, but you gave me the instruction to give the client to my junior, right? Additionally, I've heard that you were the junior's mentor." The manager appeared taken aback, not anticipating a response from me. Seldom did he say, "You're speaking too loudly. You do understand that it would be problematic if someone heard, right?" Panicking, the section head looked silly, and I couldn't help but laugh. A boss who installs his own subordinates and then gloats about it is not someone I need. That contract trouble, anyway, was your responsibility. You do realize that it has nothing to do with me. The section head abruptly ended the chat as my other employees who had completed the tour were congregating close to the office. I sighed heavily when I saw him re-enter the circle of the main company. I seemed to be harboring some residual affections for the headquarters. That was undoubtedly aided by being stimulated and re-establishing contact with former coworkers. A small part of me lamented not being able to go back to that circle. Alice was standing behind me and appeared to have been there for some time. I didn't mean to listen. It seems that she had heard me talking to the section head. Nevertheless, she declared, "Errors must be fixed. I've accepted that it's all in the past." I responded in a non-committal manner since I didn't want to deal with this matter once more. Alice gave me a worried look as she glanced at me. She looked at my face for a bit before letting out a tiny sigh. "Are you aware of the facial expression you're making? You seem to be quite depressed. Would you please be truthful? I'd prefer not to see your face." Raymond Alice pointed it out, and I hardly touched my face. It humiliated me to be seen looking that way. It's the most uncool thing ever to pretend to be regretting something while still having given up. I'm acting like I have no residual sentiments, which is incredibly uncool. I told Alice how I really felt, covering my shaking mouth with my hand. It seemed impossible for me to lie to her. "It's not a bad thing. It's acceptable to persist in pursuing your goals. Come back to where you belong. I'll assist you," Alice remarked, her words of encouragement beaming from her eyes. Saying thank you, I bowed my head. "Leave it to me," she smiled in response. Then a string of busy days started. I gathered proof of the manager's misconduct with the help of my former coworkers. It turned out that not only had I been held accountable for his errors, but other coworkers had also had their successes taken advantage of. As we investigated every illegal detail, the accusations continued to mount. Alice worked hard to get the paperwork ready to file the manager's accusation. Alice looked at the petition my former coworkers had started calling for my return to the headquarters and said, "You're surprisingly popular despite being the kind of person who'd say such terrible things to me," looking surprised. It seems that she was still upset with me for what transpired that evening. I sincerely apologize for that moment. I drank too much because I felt anxious. I admitted, I got too intoxicated because I was anxious about spending time alone myself with you. Nervous about being with an old woman like me, she said with a giggle. I felt like Alice could look right through me. I took a big breath and looked up at her. That day, I really wanted to make a move on you, but I just couldn't say it. Alice smiled contentedly at what I had said. Then she abruptly ended the talk by saying, "We'll continue this later." My confession seems to have been ignored. Subsequently, the head office successfully accused. Alice was so happy to hear from me that she began saying, "I'm glad," over and over. I can now go back to the main office. That's excellent news, is it not? From my phone, I could hear Alice's voice with a trace of sadness. And with that, I decided. To cheer her up, I made the decision to board the final flight. I was eager to see Alice's face once more. I hurried to Alice's legal practice after grabbing a taxi at the airport. In the office, the lights were still on even though it was already late. I'm back. Alice had been working alone, overtime, when I knocked on her door at her law office. "Wow, you've returned already. Greetings on your arrival back to headquarters. When will you return?" Alice dropped the documents she was studying and began to spin her pen on her slender fingers. Her cheeks were flushed a little. "Are you going to bring in a secretary? I believe I could perform the task fairly effectively." Startled, Alice let her pen fall to the ground. "What? Why? How is the headquarters doing?" I choose to be truthful with myself. I informed her that I had filed my resignation and turned down the invitation to go back to head office. "All I want is to spend my entire life with you, Alice. Is that detrimental?" "There's no reason that would be bad." She gave a halting response. She probably showed me that it's okay to struggle toward the future you want, and that it's not something to be ashamed of. She also made me realize, for the first time in my life, how important it is to be true to yourself. "Yes, but you're not hiring here. Forward your resume to the management of the factory." Her tone abruptly changed to one of business, and I missed the reddening of her cheeks. She is my eternal partner in life. I want the future to be one in which she is at my side no matter what, and I will stop at nothing to make that happen.
"Why are you unhurt?" my husband questioned with an unsettling tone when I informed him that my mother-in-law had been in a car accident while driving his car. She was transported by ambulance while unconscious. The doctor said tonight was critical. When I contacted my husband, he responded with, "Why are you unharmed?" Realizing his slip of the tongue, my husband tried to cover it up, but I couldn't hear anything beyond that. I managed to maintain composure and informed my husband only about the hospital, quietly ending the call. At that moment, memories of my husband's unnatural behavior flooded my mind. Later, a single email on his phone revealed a shocking truth. "My name is Mary Rose. 14 years ago, I married my husband, who worked at an auto repair company. At his request, I became a full-time homemaker. However, the once kind husband gradually revealed his true nature. After our daughter was born, he started verbally abusing me, calling me a parasite leeching off his earnings at every opportunity. Despite growing frustration, I couldn't work outside the home while caring for our young daughter, so I endured his behavior. Eventually, when our daughter entered elementary school, I managed to secure a part-time job. A year later, my work performance was recognized at the company, and my supervisor proposed, why not become a full-time employee? Honestly, I felt more suited to working outside the home than constantly gauging my husband's mood as a homemaker, so I mustered the courage to discuss this with my family. My daughter cheered, saying, "Mom, do your best at work. I'll help with household chores." She was genuinely thrilled. However, my husband remained silent, observing her enthusiasm with a displeased expression. Finally, he spoke, dripping with sarcasm, "I suppose this is just a pity offer to make you a regular employee. You'll start complaining soon enough. You should drop the idea." When I insisted, "You won't know until I try," he retorted, "I earn enough money anyway. You don't need to be a full-time employee. With our daughter's tuition fees and extracurricular activity costs, we'll never be in financial trouble, no matter how much money we have." Unable to counter my argument, he grumbled, "Do whatever you want, but don't slack off on household chores." With those words, he stormed off somewhere. Regardless, I was delighted to have persuaded my husband and couldn't help but share the news with my mother-in-law. She had endured her late, domineering husband and became a reliable ally who scolded my husband when necessary. She always cared about me and our daughter, so she was thrilled to hear about my career advancement as a full-time employee. Now I could focus more on work, thanks to my daughter's help with household chores. Consequently, my performance at the company continued to improve. However, my husband, displeased by my apparent enjoyment of work, began treating me worse. His behavior escalated day by day. "Hey, there aren't enough side dishes. You need to prepare at least 5. There's dust in the corner of the room. Did you skip cleaning?" Despite never showing interest in household matters before, he now nitpicked every detail. Little did I know that his company was struggling financially and his salary had been significantly reduced. I wondered if his harsh treatment toward me was related to his own frustrations. Wanting to lift his spirits, I decided to prepare his favorite seafood gumbo. But when he saw it, his face turned crimson, and he approached me angrily. "What's this? I made it to cheer you up since you seemed down lately. Damn it. Is this some kind of mockery toward pathetic me?" He shouted at me, pushed me, and then began slamming the pot and ingredients onto the floor. My daughter and I huddled together in a corner, unable to do anything. "This is what happens when you anger me. Clean up properly," my husband demanded. After overturning everything on the table, he left the room with a satisfied expression. After that incident, my husband started coming home late from work more frequently. When I asked him about it, he explained that he was staying at the office late to study and obtain certifications in hopes of increasing his salary. However, on the days he worked overtime, there was always a distinct shampoo scent that didn't belong to anyone in our household. Could it be? A suspicion crossed my mind, and the word divorce flashed before me, but I couldn't confront my husband. Growing up with a single parent, I had experienced unpleasant situations, so I hesitated to take the step of divorce, especially considering our daughter. However, something changed abruptly. My husband's attitude shifted. On days when he returned early from work, he actively helped with household chores and even assisted our daughter with her homework. The drastic change left me bewildered. Perhaps the company's performance improved and his salary increased, I wondered. Gradually, I began accepting this transformed version of my husband. One day, something unexpected happened. "By the way, didn't you mention wanting to wash the car soon?" "I'll do it at work, so lend it to me," he offered. "Oh, I can handle it myself," I replied. "Don't say that. I've been tough on you because work hasn't been going well, but I'm not saying this makes up for it. Let me take care of the washing." "Oh, and I'll do a quick inspection too," he insisted. I was honestly surprised because he had never made such an offer since we got married. However, when I looked into his sincere eyes, I decided to ask for his help. You need a car for shopping and other things, right? Since the inspection will take about a week, go ahead and use my car during that time. I can manage with my bicycle for commuting and shopping, he suggested. No. Rainy days can be tough for shopping. Use it without hesitation, he urged. Given his strong attachment to cars due to his profession, I hesitated to drive his car, fearing any mishaps. Yet, he persistently encouraged me. Despite feeling slightly uneasy about it, I eventually accepted the keys he practically forced upon me. Still, I couldn't bring myself to drive his car. Even after 2 days of borrowing it, I continued commuting and shopping by bicycle. One day, my mother-in-law visited our home with souvenirs from a trip. Since I had a weekday off, I invited her inside, and we sat down for tea. During our conversation, my mother-in-law mentioned that she wanted to take the souvenirs to a friend who lived in the neighboring town. She asked if she could borrow my car for this purpose. Since my mother-in-law doesn't own a car, she occasionally borrows mine. However, on that particular day, the car available at home was not my usual one, it was my husband's. I explained the situation to her, but my mother-in-law insisted, it's only about a 30-minute round trip, so it'll be fine. She got into my husband's car and drove off. However, an hour passed, and she still hadn't returned. Why hasn't she called? I wondered. She always does when she's running late. As I waited, imagining she might be engrossed in conversation with her friend, the home phone suddenly rang. When I answered, thinking it might be my mother-in-law, it turned out to be the police. They informed me that my mother-in-law had mistakenly hit the gas instead of the brake and crashed into a nearby convenience store. Fortunately, there were no casualties, but my mother-in-law was in critical condition and unconscious, taken to the hospital. I immediately tried calling my husband, but he didn't answer. In a panic, I rushed to the hospital. The doctor's words were cruel, "This is the turning point tonight." My mind couldn't process the sudden situation, but I knew I had to contact my husband. I called him repeatedly until he finally picked up. However, his response was beyond belief. "Why are you unharmed?" I was dumbfounded. He quickly backtracked, claiming he was too shaken, but his shocking words left me speechless. I relayed the hospital's name to him and hung up quietly. Earlier, what was that all about? The suspicion toward my husband lingered in my mind, but there were more pressing matters. Lying on a hospital bed in the emergency treatment room was my mother-in-law, connected to numerous tubes and IVs. Her painful appearance left me speechless. Despite the doctor's diligent efforts, my mother-in-law never regained consciousness and peacefully passed away. She was such a kind soul. The moment I learned of her passing, I collapsed in tears right there. An hour later, my husband arrived at the hospital with our daughter. They too sobbed alongside me, mourning the loss of my mother-in-law. I observed from a distance as they grieved, but my attention shifted to my husband's phone, casually placed nearby. Just then, a time-sensitive message appeared on the screen, and the short text caught my eye. My heart skipped a beat. Did the plan succeed? Indeed, the message explicitly stated that. What is this? What does it mean? Despite my agitation, I wanted to understand the context, so I pretended nonchalance and handed the phone to my husband. "Hey, someone sent you a message," I said. His eyes widened in surprise as he snatched the phone from my hand. "Why are you so flustered?" His response was evasive. "Oh, thanks. It might be something urgent. I'll check it outside." With those words, my husband hurriedly grabbed his phone and left for somewhere. As much as I wanted to tail him, I couldn't leave our still crying daughter behind. The following day, my mother-in-law's funeral was conducted solemnly. Afterward, the police investigation concluded that the cause of her accident remained unknown. Gradually, daily life returned to normal, but I couldn't shake off the nagging feeling about the content of that message from before. So, one day, about a month and a half after the funeral, as the memorial service for my mother-in-law approached, I mustered the courage to check my husband's phone while he slept. However, what I discovered was a horrifying truth. Is it possible that such a gentle soul like her lost her life over something like this? My hand trembled with anger as I resolved to seek revenge against my husband. The day after my mother-in-law's memorial service arrived. After the service, my husband sat with relatives at a dinner gathering, reminiscing about memories with my mother-in-law. I watched coldly from the sidelines. As the alcohol flowed, my husband's face turned crimson, and he seemed to notice my gaze. Incoherently, he began to confront me. "Hey, what's with that look? Are you secretly glad Mom is gone because you disliked her? That's not true. She was always kind to our daughter and me." "I respected her," I replied. "Then why did you lend her my car that day? If you hadn't meddled, she wouldn't have been in that accident," he accused. My heartstrings snapped at his words. I had blamed myself countless times for that incident, but I couldn't bear hearing it from him, the one who tampered with things to cause the accident. "Ha! Tampered? What are you talking about?" he stammered, trying to play it off with a nervous chuckle. That's when I thrust my phone screen toward him. Earlier, I had covertly forwarded email exchanges from his phone to mine. Those messages revealed a sinister plan between my husband and his affair partner. They had intentionally manipulated the brakes on the unfamiliar car I drove, intending to harm me. The email he received at the hospital, "Did the plan succeed?" was sent by his affair partner. Their ultimate goal was to collect insurance money after my demise and then flee abroad, leaving our daughter behind. Exposing this truth to our relatives, my husband's face drained of color. He stammered, "I thought I'd already deleted the evidence." His panicked outburst confirmed his guilt. Later, as relatives bombarded my husband with questions, he stumbled over his answers, unable to provide a coherent response. I watched him with disdain as he lashed out at me, blaming me for everything. "Hey, it's all your fault that things turned out like this. Do something, isn't it all your fault?" he shouted. "I'm going to tell the police everything, and you'll face the consequences," I declared. As I reached for my phone to report the incident, my husband finally realized the gravity of the situation. Sweat poured down his forehead. "Wait. I'm also grieving the loss of my mother, you know. Please don't report me. I'll break up with my affair partner. Mom wouldn't want to see me get arrested by the police," he pleaded. "Even if you break up now, it won't bring Mom back. Besides, she'd want you to pay for your actions," I retorted. "Mom would never say that," he screamed, lunging at me, but relatives restrained him. I proceeded to make the call. Just before they loaded him into the police car, he tearfully apologized, but my resolve remained unshaken. Afterward, I divorced my husband. The evidence I had became decisive, leading to the arrest of both him and his affair partner. Their malicious act of tampering with the car resulted in the loss of a life, and they are now facing approximately 10 years in prison. As for the $20,000 compensation I demanded from them, the affair partner's parents and my ex-husband's relatives each paid their share. When they re-enter the outside world, they'll be expected to repay it. On the other hand, I moved to a slightly distant place with my daughter, starting a new life. Despite our busy schedules with work and studies, we support each other and live happily.
I stood in the kitchen, my hands trembling as I clutched the phone. The text message from Martin glowed on the screen. "Working late again. Don't wait up." Lies. All lies. I glanced at the clock. 7:30 p.m. Olivia would be home from soccer practice any minute. How could I face my daughter knowing what I knew about her father? The front door slammed, and Olivia's voice rang out. Mom, I'm starving. I quickly wiped my eyes and plastered on a smile. In the kitchen, sweetie. How was practice? Olivia bounced in, her ponytail swinging. At 15, she was the spitting image of me at that age. Before I met Martin, before everything changed. It was great. Coach says I might start next game. That's wonderful, honey. I turned to the fridge, grateful for the distraction. How about some pasta for dinner? Sounds good. Where's Dad? The question hit me like a punch to the gut. I gripped the refrigerator door, steadying myself. He's working late. Olivia groaned. Again? He's always working these days. If only that were true. I took a deep breath and faced my daughter. Liv, there's something we need to talk about. Her brow furrowed. What's wrong, Mom? You look upset. I gestured to the kitchen table. Let's sit down. As we settled into our chairs, I reached for Olivia's hand. Her fingers were calloused from hours of soccer practice, but they still felt so small in mine. How could I shatter her world? Honey, your father and I, we're having some problems. Olivia's eyes widened. What kind of problems? I swallowed hard. I've discovered that your father has been seeing someone else. The words hung in the air between us. Olivia jerked her hand away, her face a mask of disbelief. What? No, Dad wouldn't do that. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I wish it wasn't true, but you're lying. Olivia shot to her feet, her chair scraping across the floor. Dad loves us. He wouldn't cheat. The phone in my pocket buzzed. Another text from Martin, grabbing drinks with the guys. Be home late. I pulled out the phone, my hands shaking. Liv, look. She snatched the phone, her eyes scanning the message. So, he's out with friends. That doesn't mean anything. Olivia, please. I know this is hard to hear, but... The front door opened and Martin's voice called out. Anyone home? Olivia's head snapped up, her eyes blazing. Before I could stop her, she bolted from the kitchen. No, Dad! Mom's saying awful things about you. Tell her she's wrong. I followed, my heart pounding. Martin stood in the entryway, briefcase in hand, looking bewildered. What's going on? Olivia thrust my phone at him. Mom says you're cheating, but that's not true, right? Tell her. Martin's face drained of color as he read the text. His eyes met mine, and in that moment I saw the truth written all over his face. Oh, Liv, I whispered. Olivia looked from Martin to me, and back again. The realization dawned in her eyes, followed quickly by hurt and anger. How could you? She screamed at Martin. Then she turned and ran up the stairs, slamming her bedroom door. Martin took a step toward me. Elaine, I can explain. I held up a hand, stopping him in his tracks. Don't. Just don't. We stood there in silence, the weight of broken promises and shattered trust hanging between us. Finally I spoke. I want a divorce. Martin's shoulders sagged. Elaine, please, we can work this out, for Olivia's sake. No, I cut him off. We're done. I'm taking Olivia and leaving. You can't just take her. Martin's voice rose. She's my daughter, too. I met his gaze, steel in my voice. Watch me. As I turned to head upstairs and comfort our daughter, one thought crystallized in my mind. I would do whatever it took to protect Olivia and build a new life for us, with or without Martin's cooperation. I sat at Teresa's kitchen table, clutching a mug of tea that had long since gone cold. My best friend of 20 years listened intently as I poured out the whole sordid tale. I just can't believe it, Teresa. 23 years of marriage, and this is how it ends. Teresa reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Oh, Elaine, I'm so sorry. What are you going to do now? I sighed, feeling the weight of uncertainty pressing down on me. I don't know. I told Martin I want a divorce, but... God, how did we get here? As I spoke, memories flooded back. Martin and I, young and in love, dancing at our wedding. The joy on his face when Olivia was born. Family vacations, holiday dinners, quiet nights curled up on the couch. When had it all started to unravel? Remember when you first introduced us? I asked Teresa. That New Year's Eve party at your place? She smiled softly. How could I forget? Martin couldn't take his eyes off you all night. He was so charming back then. Funny, attentive. I thought I'd hit the jackpot. Teresa's expression turned serious. Elaine, you can't blame yourself for this. Martin made his choices. I nodded, fighting back tears. I know. It's just, we struggled so much these past few years. The financial stress, Martin's job changes, Olivia hitting her difficult teenage phase. I thought we were in it together, you know? A team. And now I feel like a fool. I stood up abruptly, pacing Teresa's small kitchen. All those late nights at the office, the sudden business trips. How long has this been going on? How many other women have there been? Teresa stood and wrapped me in a hug. Oh, honey, you don't need to torture yourself with those questions. What matters now is taking care of yourself and Olivia. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. When are you coming home? Dad keeps trying to talk to me. I showed Teresa the message, my stomach churning. I don't know how to protect her from this, Teresa. She idolized Martin. You start by being honest with her, Teresa said firmly, and by showing her that you're strong enough to get through this, both of you. I nodded, gathering my resolve. You're right, we need to make a clean break, start fresh. What about the house? Teresa asked. I hesitated. The house had been our dream, a beautiful Victorian we'd spent years restoring. But now, I can't stay there, too many memories. Besides, I don't think I can afford it on my own. You know, Teresa said slowly, my sister's rental property just opened up. It's smaller, but it's in a great school district for Olivia, and I'm sure Sarah would give you a good deal. Hope flickered in my chest. Really? That could work. As I gathered my things to leave, Teresa pulled me in for another hug. You've got this, Elaine. And I'm here for you, every step of the way. I drove home, my mind racing with plans and worries. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw Martin's car still parked there. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. I wasn't ready to face him again. Not yet. Taking a deep breath, I walked into the house. Olivia was curled up on the couch, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. Martin sat in the armchair, looking lost. Mom! Olivia launched herself into my arms. Where were you? Dad's been trying to explain, but I don't want to hear it. I stroked her hair, shooting a warning glance at Martin. It's okay, sweetie. We don't have to talk about it right now. Martin stood, his face a mask of guilt and desperation. Elaine, please, can we just... Not now, I cut him off. Olivia, why don't you go upstairs and start packing some things? We're going to stay at Aunt Teresa's for a few days. As Olivia trudged upstairs, Martin stepped closer. You can't just take her, Elaine. We need to work this out. I met his gaze, steel in my voice. No, Martin, you lost the right to make demands when you broke our vows. I'm doing what's best for our daughter. As I turned to follow Olivia upstairs, Martin called out, I'll fight you on this, Elaine. I swear I will. I paused at the foot of the stairs, a chill running down my spine. The battle lines were drawn, and I knew the real fight was just beginning. The guest room at Teresa's house felt like a sanctuary after the chaos of the past few days. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching Olivia unpack her hastily thrown-together suitcase. Mom? Her voice was small, vulnerable. What's going to happen now? I patted the spot next to me, and she sat down, leaning her head on my shoulder. I don't know all the details yet, sweetie, but I promise you we're going to be okay. Olivia sniffled. I hate him, Mom. I hate what he did to us. My heart ached at her words. Oh, Liv, I know you're hurting, but try not to let hate consume you. Your father made terrible choices, but he still loves you. She jerked away from me, eyes flashing. How can you say that? If he loved us, he wouldn't have cheated. I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. Adults can make mistakes, even huge ones, without stopping loving their children. What your father did was wrong, but it doesn't erase the good times or the love he has for you. Olivia stood up, pacing the small room. I don't care. I don't want to see him or talk to him ever again. Liv. I mean it, Mom. She whirled to face me, tears streaming down her cheeks. He abandoned us. He chose her over his family. How am I supposed to forgive that? I stood and pulled her into a tight hug, feeling her body shake with sobs. You don't have to forgive him right now, or maybe ever. But I need you to know that this isn't your fault. Your father's choices are his own. As Olivia's tears subsided, I gently guided her back to the bed. Listen, sweetie, I know this is hard, but I need you to be strong. We're going to get through this together, okay? She nodded, wiping her eyes. Okay, Mom, I trust you. A knock at the door interrupted us. Teresa poked her head in. Sorry to bother you, but Elaine, Martin's here. He's demanding to see Olivia. My stomach clenched. Absolutely not. He can't just show up here and... I want to see him, Olivia said suddenly. I turned to her, surprised. Are you sure? You don't have to if you're not ready. Olivia's jaw set in a determined line. I'm sure. I have some things I need to say to him. Reluctantly, I nodded. All right, but I'm coming with you. We followed Teresa downstairs to find Martin pacing in the living room. When he saw Olivia, his face crumpled. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry." Olivia crossed her arms, her voice ice cold. "Sorry for what, Dad? For cheating on Mom? For lying to us? For breaking apart our family?" Martin flinched. "Liv, please. I know I made a terrible mistake, but I love you. I want to make this right." "You can't make this right." Olivia's voice rose. "You ruined everything." I stepped forward, placing a hand on Olivia's shoulder. "Martin, I think you should go." He shook his head, desperation in his eyes. "No, please. Just let me explain. Olivia, your mother and we've been having problems for a long time. It's complicated." "Stop it," I snapped. "Don't you dare try to justify what you did or blame our marriage problems. You made a choice, Martin. Own it." Martin's face hardened. "Fine, but I'm not giving up on my daughter. I'll fight for custody if I have to." Ice ran through my veins. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me," he growled. Olivia looked between us, her face pale. "I don't want to live with you, Dad. I want to stay with Mom." Martin's expression softened. "Sweetie, I know you're upset now, but get out." Olivia's voice was low, trembling with anger. "I don't want to see you anymore. Just go." With a last pleading look at me, Martin turned and left. As the door closed behind him, Olivia collapsed into my arms, sobbing once more. Over her head, I met Teresa's worried gaze. We both knew this was far from over. Later that night, after Olivia had cried herself to sleep, I sat at Teresa's kitchen table, my laptop open in front of me. With shaking hands, I began to type, "Documentation of Martin Henderson's infidelity and its impact on our family." I knew the road ahead would be difficult, but I was determined to protect Olivia and build a new life for us, no matter what it took. I sat in my car outside Martin's office, my heart pounding. After days of digging through bank statements and phone records, I'd finally uncovered the truth. Now I needed to confront him face to face. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out of the car and marched into the building. The receptionist looked up, startled. "Mrs. Henderson, we weren't expecting you." "I need to see my husband," I said, my voice steady despite my churning stomach. Before she could respond, Martin's office door opened. He froze when he saw me, his face pale. "Elaine, what are you doing here?" I held up the manila folder in my hand. "We need to talk. Now." Martin glanced nervously at the receptionist before ushering me into his office. As soon as the door closed, I slammed the folder onto his desk. "Who is she, Martin?" He blinked, feigning confusion. "What are you talking about?" I opened the folder, spreading out credit card statements and hotel receipts. "Don't lie to me. Not anymore. I know about the charges at the Hilton, the jewelry store purchases. Who is she?" Martin's shoulders sagged. He sank into his chair, suddenly looking old and defeated. "Her name is Rebecca. She was a client." The confirmation hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the edge of his desk to steady myself. "How long?" "Elaine, please." "How long?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. 8 months. 8 months. While I was planning our anniversary trip, while we were celebrating Olivia's birthday, I felt sick. "Do you love her?" The words came out in a whisper. Martin's head snapped up. "No, God, no. It was just, I don't know, a distraction, I guess. Things between us have been so strained lately." "Don't you dare blame this on me," I hissed. "You made a choice, Martin. You chose to betray our vows, to lie to me and Olivia for months." He reached for my hand, but I jerked away. "Elaine, I'm so sorry. Please, can we work this out? For Olivia's sake?" I laughed bitterly. "You should have thought about Olivia before you started sleeping with your client." Martin's face hardened. "Fine. If that's how you want to play it, I'll fight you every step of the way. I won't let you take my daughter from me." "Your daughter?" I spat. "The one you abandoned? The one who says she never wants to see you again?" He flinched as if I'd struck him. "She doesn't mean that. She's just upset." "She has every right to be upset. You broke her heart, Martin. You broke our family." We stared at each other across the desk, years of love and trust crumbling between us. Finally, Martin spoke, his voice low and dangerous. "I won't give up without a fight, Elaine. I have resources you can't imagine. If you try to take Olivia away from me, I'll make sure you have nothing left." A chill ran down my spine, but I stood my ground. "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise." I gathered the documents, my hands shaking. "You've already taken everything that matters, Martin. But if you want a war, you've got one." As I turned to leave, Martin called out, "Wait, there's something else you should know." I paused, my hand on the doorknob. What? Rebecca, she's pregnant. The world tilted on its axis. I stumbled, catching myself on the doorframe. What did you say? Martin's voice was barely audible. She's 3 months along. It's mine. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Without another word, I wrenched open the door and fled. In the parking lot, I sat in my car, gasping for air. A baby. Martin was having a baby with another woman. The final betrayal, the ultimate nail in the coffin of our marriage. As the shock faded, a new emotion took its place. Determination. Martin wanted a fight? He'd get one. I pulled out my phone and dialed Teresa's number. I need the name of the best divorce lawyer in town, I said when she answered. It's time to take Martin for everything he's worth. I stared at the divorce papers spread across Teresa's kitchen table, my signature still fresh on the dotted line. It felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. Are you sure about this, Elaine? Teresa asked gently. I nodded, my jaw set. I have to do this, for Olivia and for myself. The doorbell rang, startling us both. Teresa went to answer it, returning with a grim expression. It's your mother-in-law. My stomach dropped. Linda. Of course, Martin would send her to do his dirty work. I steeled myself as Linda burst into the kitchen, her face flushed with anger. Elaine, what do you think you're doing? Filing for divorce? Have you lost your mind? I stood, facing her head on. Linda, I understand you're upset, but this is between Martin and me. She waved a dismissive hand. Nonsense. Marriage is about family, about commitment. You can't just throw it away because of one little mistake. Little mistake? I felt my temper rising. Your son had an affair for 8 months. He got another woman pregnant. That's not a little mistake, Linda. That's a betrayal. Linda's eyes widened. Pregnant? What are you talking about? I froze, realizing my error. Martin hadn't told his parents yet. I'm sorry. I thought you knew. She sank into a chair, the fight draining out of her. Oh, Martin, what have you done? As much as I resented Linda's interference, I couldn't help feeling a twinge of sympathy. She was losing her family, too. The back door slammed, and Olivia walked in, stopping short when she saw Linda. Grandma, what are you doing here? Linda stood, arms outstretched. Oh, sweetheart, I came to talk some sense into your mother. This divorce nonsense. It's not nonsense, Olivia cut her off, her voice cold. Dad cheated. He lied to all of us. Linda flinched. Olivia, honey, I know you're hurt, but your father loves you. We can work this out as a family. Olivia's eyes flashed with anger. We're not a family anymore. Dad made sure of that. I stepped between them, sensing Olivia's rising distress. Linda, I think it's best if you go now. She hesitated, then nodded. Just think about what you're doing, Elaine, to all of us. As the door closed behind her, Olivia turned to me, her face pale. Mom, you're not going to change your mind, are you? I pulled her into a hug. No, sweetie, I promise you, we're moving forward. Later that evening, as Olivia did homework in her room, my phone buzzed with a text from Martin. We need to talk about the baby. My hands shook as I replied, There's nothing to discuss. It's over. His response came quickly. Please, Elaine, just hear me out, for old time's sake. I stared at the screen, torn. Part of me wanted to ignore him, to cut all ties, but another part, the part that still remembered the good times, hesitated. Before I could decide, another text came through. I'm outside. Please. My heart raced as I peeked out the window. There he was, sitting in his car, looking lost and defeated. Everything okay, Mom? Olivia called from upstairs. I took a deep breath, making my decision. Everything's fine, honey. I just need to step out for a minute. As I walked towards Martin's car, I steeled myself for whatever came next. This conversation could change everything, for better or worse. But I was done being a victim. Whatever Martin had to say, I would face it head-on, for myself and for Olivia. I tapped on the car window, my voice steady as I spoke. You have 5 minutes, Martin. Make them count. I stood in the middle of our new apartment, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and the lingering scent of fresh paint. It wasn't much, but it was ours, a fresh start for Olivia and me. Mom, Olivia called from her room. Where's the box with my soccer trophies? Check near the bookshelf, honey. I replied, smiling at her enthusiasm. Despite everything, Olivia was adapting well to our new life. As I unpacked dishes in the kitchen, my phone buzzed. A text from Teresa. How's the new place? Settling in okay? I was about to reply when a sharp knock at the door made me jump. Frowning, I set down my phone and went to answer it. The moment I opened the door, I wished I hadn't. Linda stood there, her face a mask of barely contained fury. "We need to talk," she said, pushing past me into the apartment. "Linda, this isn't a good time." She whirled to face me. "When is a good time, Elaine? When you've completely destroyed our family?" I took a deep breath, struggling to keep my voice calm. "I didn't destroy anything, Linda. Martin made his choices." "Mom?" Olivia appeared in the hallway, her eyes widening at the sight of her grandmother. "What's going on?" Linda's expression softened slightly. "Oh, Olivia, sweetheart, I've come to talk some sense into your mother. This divorce nonsense has gone on long enough." Olivia's face hardened. "It's not nonsense, Grandma. Dad cheated. He lied to all of us." "Olivia, go to your room," I said quietly. "I'll handle this." As soon as Olivia's door closed, Linda rounded on me. "How dare you turn my granddaughter against her father, against our family?" I felt my own anger rising. "I haven't turned anyone against anyone, Linda. Martin did that all on his own when he decided to have an affair. People make mistakes, Elaine. Marriage is about forgiveness, about working through the hard times." I laughed bitterly. "Forgiveness? He got another woman pregnant, Linda. How am I supposed to forgive that?" Linda's face paled. That's just a rumor." Martin assured me it wasn't true. "Well, he lied to you too then, because I heard it straight from him." For a moment, Linda looked lost. Then her eyes hardened again. "Even so, there are ways to deal with that situation. You don't have to throw away 23 years of marriage." I was about to retort when the front door burst open. Martin strode in, looking frantic. "Mom, what are you doing here?" he demanded. "I told you to let me handle this." Linda turned to him, her voice pleading. "I'm trying to save your marriage, Martin, to keep our family together." Martin ran a hand through his hair, looking desperate. "Elaine, please, can we talk about this? There has to be a way to work things out." I felt cornered, overwhelmed. "Both of you need to leave. Now." "Not until you agree to give our marriage another chance," Martin insisted. "Another chance?" Olivia's voice rang out. She stood in the hallway, tears streaming down her face. "After everything he's done?" Martin's face crumpled. "Liv, sweetheart, I know I made a terrible mistake, but I love you and your mother more than anything." "Then why did you do it?" Olivia screamed. "Why did you ruin everything?" The room fell silent, the weight of Olivia's pain hanging heavy in the air. I moved to comfort her, but she jerked away. "I hate you," she spat at Martin. "I hate all of this." Before anyone could react, Olivia bolted for the door, shoving past Martin and Linda. "Olivia!" I cried, racing after her. But by the time I reached the street, she was gone, swallowed up by the busy city around us. I turned back to Martin and Linda, my heart pounding with fear and fury. "Are you happy now? Is this what you wanted?" As they stared at me, shock written across their faces, I made a decision. No more playing nice, no more trying to keep the peace. "I want both of you out of my apartment and out of our lives," I said, my voice cold. "And if anything happens to my daughter, I swear to God I'll make you regret the day you ever met me." My heart raced as I dialed Olivia's number for the 100th time. Straight to voicemail. Again. It had been hours since she ran off, and the sun was setting, casting long shadows across our new neighborhood. "Anything?" Martin asked, his voice tight with worry. I shook my head, fighting back tears. Despite everything, we'd come together to search for our daughter. Even Linda was out there, checking Olivia's favorite spots from our old neighborhood. Just as I was about to suggest calling the police, my phone buzzed. A text from Teresa. "Olivia's here. She's safe." Relief washed over me, quickly followed by a new wave of anxiety. "She's at Teresa's," I told Martin. "I'm going to get her." "I'm coming with you," he insisted. Too exhausted to argue, I nodded. The car ride was tense, neither of us speaking. When we pulled up to Teresa's house, I saw Olivia sitting on the porch steps, her eyes red and puffy. As soon as she saw us, she stood, her body tense. "I'm not going back," she declared. I approached slowly, hands raised. "Liv, honey, we were so worried. Are you okay?" She crossed her arms, glaring at Martin. "I'm fine. I just needed to get away from everything." Martin stepped forward. "Olivia, I'm so sorry. I know I've hurt you, but please, can we talk about this?" Olivia's eyes flashed with anger. "Talk about what, Dad? How you threw away our family for some woman? How you're having a baby with her?" I saw Martin flinch at her words. Good. Let him feel the pain he'd caused us. It's not that simple, Martin began, but I cut him off. No, Martin, it is that simple. You made your choices, and now we're all living with the consequences. Just then, Linda's car screeched to a halt behind ours. She burst out, her face a mix of relief and determination. "Oh, thank God you're all right," she said to Olivia. Then she turned to me, her expression hardening. "Elaine, this has gone on long enough. We need to fix this family now." I felt my temper rising. "Fix it? How exactly do you propose we do that, Linda?" To my shock, Martin stepped forward, taking my hand. "By remarrying," he said softly. "Elaine, I know I've made terrible mistakes, but I love you. I love our family. Please give me another chance." I jerked my hand away, stunned. "Are you out of your mind?" Linda nodded enthusiastically. "It's the perfect solution. We can have a small ceremony, renew your vows, show Olivia that love can overcome anything." I laughed bitterly. "Love? This isn't about love. This is about you trying to save face, to pretend everything's fine when it's not." Martin's face hardened. "Fine. If you won't consider remarriage, then I want to be compensated for the wedding expenses. After all, you're the one ending this marriage." I stared at him, incredulous. "Excuse me? You heard me?" he said, his voice cold. "I spent a fortune on our wedding. If you're throwing that away, I want to be reimbursed." The absurdity of it all hit me like a tidal wave. I felt a hysterical laugh bubbling up in my throat. "You want me to pay you for a wedding that happened over 20 years ago? After you cheated on me?" Linda stepped in, her voice soothing. "Now, Elaine, let's be reasonable. Martin's just trying to protect himself financially. You can't blame him for that." I looked from Martin to Linda to Olivia, who stood frozen, her eyes wide with disbelief. In that moment, something inside me snapped. "Get out," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "All of you. Get out of my sight before I do something I'll regret." Martin opened his mouth to argue, but Olivia cut him off. "Just go, Dad. You've done enough damage." As Martin and Linda retreated to their cars, I turned to Olivia, my heart breaking for her all over again. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I never wanted any of this for you." Olivia's eyes met mine, filled with a mixture of pain and determination. "I know, Mom, but we're going to be okay, right? Just you and me?" I pulled her into a fierce hug, feeling her trembling against me. "Yes, baby, we're going to be okay. I promise." As we stood there holding each other, I knew the fight was far from over, but for the first time in months I felt a glimmer of hope. Whatever came next, Olivia and I would face it together. I stood in the courtroom, my heart pounding as the judge reviewed our case. Olivia sat beside me, her hand clasped tightly in mine. Across the aisle, Martin glared daggers at us, Linda whispering furiously in his ear. Just as the judge was about to speak, the courtroom doors burst open. My father, Kenneth, strode in, his face set with determination. "Your Honor," he called out, "I have evidence that's crucial to this case." The judge frowned but nodded. "Proceed, Mr. Lawson." Dad approached the bench, handing over a thick folder. "These are financial records showing that Martin Henderson has been embezzling from his company for years. The money he claims my daughter owes him for their wedding, it was stolen funds." The courtroom erupted in gasps and murmurs. I stared at Martin, shocked. His face had gone pale, his eyes wide with panic. "That's a lie," he shouted, jumping to his feet. "Your Honor, this is a desperate attempt to—" "Sit down, Mr. Henderson," the judge ordered sharply. She flipped through the documents, her expression growing more severe by the second. I leaned over to Dad, whispering, "How did you get this?" He squeezed my shoulder. "I've had my suspicions for years, Elaine. When I heard about his ridiculous demands, I knew it was time to dig deeper." The judge cleared her throat, silencing the room. "In light of this new evidence, I'm ordering a full investigation into Mr. Henderson's finances. As for the divorce settlement..." She turned to me, her eyes kind but firm. "Mrs. Henderson, you are granted full custody of your daughter, Olivia. Mr. Henderson will pay alimony and child support as originally outlined. His claim for reimbursement of wedding expenses is denied." Relief washed over me. It was over. We had won. As we left the courtroom, Martin caught up to us, his face a mask of desperation. "Elaine, please, you can't do this to me, to our family." I turned to face him, feeling a strength I hadn't known I possessed. "Our family? You destroyed our family the moment you decided to cheat, Martin, and now you'll have to live with the consequences." Linda appeared at his side, her face twisted with anger. "This isn't over, Elaine. We'll appeal." No, Mom, Martin interrupted, his shoulders sagging in defeat. It's over. As they walked away, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Olivia hugged me tightly, tears in her eyes. We did it, Mom. We're free. Dad wrapped his arms around both of us. I'm so proud of you, Elaine. You stood your ground, fought for what was right. Months passed, and life settled into a new rhythm. Olivia and I thrived in our apartment, building a life filled with laughter and love. We heard through the grapevine that Martin had lost his job and was facing criminal charges for embezzlement. Linda had retreated to Florida, humiliated by the scandal. One sunny afternoon, as Olivia and I walked through the park near our new home, she turned to me with a serious expression. Mom, I want you to know, I'm okay. About Dad, I'm still angry, but I'm not letting it consume me anymore. I pulled her close, marveling at her strength and maturity. I'm so proud of you, sweetie. We've both come a long way, haven't we? She nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. Yeah, we have, and you know what? I think we're going to be just fine. As we continued our walk, I reflected on the tumultuous journey we'd been through. The pain, the betrayal, the fights. They had all led us here, to this moment of peace and understanding. I thought about the woman I was when this all began. Scared, hurt, unsure of my future. Now, I stood tall, confident in my ability to face whatever life threw my way. Olivia and I had emerged stronger, our bond unbreakable. The path ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in years, I felt truly hopeful. We had weathered the storm, and now, bathed in the warm sunlight of a new beginning, I knew that the best was yet to come. As we rounded the corner towards home, I squeezed Olivia's hand, feeling a surge of love and gratitude. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, two strong, resilient women ready to write the next chapter of our lives on our own terms.
My name is Carrie. This is the story of how I got rid of my horrible mother-in-law. Truth be told, I am not solely responsible for getting her kicked out of home. It was her own antics that caused her to be thrown out. She almost went with the cops had I not been the bigger person. My mother-in-law, Alina, is simply an insane person. She's one of those woman haters who didn't want any woman near her. Unfortunately for her, she ended up having a daughter just after her son. And to add to her misery, her son Keith ignored her protest and married an ambitious woman like me. From the very beginning, Alina was super rude and judgmental towards me. Keith and I met through a dating app, which Alina found outrageous. She said, "Why the hell did you pick up a woman from a dating app? You know girls of this type usually like to sleep around and cheat on their partners." Mom, what is wrong with you? You cannot say these things about Carrie. She's a sweet girl and doesn't deserve your hate, I retorted. I have no intentions of sleeping around or cheating on Keith. I'm in love with him, and we are actually thinking about getting engaged soon, I clarified. Oh my God, Keith, is this true? Elena asked. Yes, Mom. I'm planning on popping the question soon. Carrie knows it's coming, but the rest is a surprise, Keith replied. Must be after your money, Keith. Why the hell would she hurry you into marriage otherwise? I'm telling you, Keith, this girl is not good for you, Elena persisted. I'm not a gold digger, Elena. I earn very well for myself, to be honest. I earn much more than Keith right now. My field pays a lot, so I'll be comfortable for the rest of my life, I defended myself. Apparently, that was the wrong thing to say. Elena became even worse after she found out that I earned more. She often berated me and hinted that I would be a bad wife, something about working women being neglectful and disloyal. I had no idea why she found problems in everything I said. So I decided to ask Keith's sister Maxine about Alina. Maxine, I have no idea why your mom hates me so much. It's like no matter how many times I prove her wrong, she finds something to complain about, I confided. Mom is like that, Carrie. She thinks girls are either gold diggers or useless second-class citizens. It boggles my mind why she thinks like that even after being a woman. She didn't even spare me. Mom neglected me all the time and didn't even help me with college. She paid in full for Keith. Now, Maxine, you don't need to demonize Mom. Yes, you had a problematic relationship with her, but that doesn't mean she hates women. Maxine explained. You have always been blind towards her, Keith. I don't blame you, actually. She was always a good mom to you. She loved you and spoiled you. You didn't see what she did to me, Maxine added. Keith, I think Maxine might be right to some extent. I wasn't present when you two were teenagers, but I can see what Alina is like. Plus, I have noticed her dismissing Maxine's achievements. There is no use trying to defend me, Carrie. Keith has always been biased about Mom. Watch out, Carrie. If Mom turns on you and wreaks havoc on your life, Keith might just take her side instead, I realized. Maxine and Keith got into a verbal spat after this. They were arguing about Alina's treatment and favoritism. It was very clear to me that Keith was somewhat disillusioned by Alina's motherly behavior towards him. She was actually a very, very toxic woman. I hated to be around her. Maxine's words also stayed with me. After Keith and I got married, I understood that she wasn't far from the truth. Keith ended up bringing Elena along when we announced our engagement. Alina quit her job and demanded that we take care of her, saying that she was getting old and it was time we took care of her. I never liked her, but I didn't say no, mostly because Keith wanted to take care of his mom. I lost my parents in college, so I didn't have the heart to turn him down. Alina started to live with us, and she quickly became a living nightmare. She constantly ordered me around and literally did nothing all day. After I returned from work, she would say, "What took you so long, Carrie? Have you forgotten that you are a married woman? You should have been here sooner. There are plenty of house chores left. Who will do everything?" Alina, I had a late meeting and couldn't get home sooner. I can't leave before completing my work in the office. And what about the work at home? Do you expect me to act like your servant and do it for you? I will do everything now. Keith will help out. It's not a big deal, Mom. You don't have to shout at her, Mom. We will do everything together. It doesn't take time when two people do it together. Absolutely not, Keith. Men don't do house chores. Your father had never helped me out. This is Carrie's job. If she can't balance work and house chores, she needs to leave her job or get a divorce. Yep, that's my mother-in-law for you guys. She hated everything I did. I guess she hated my mere existence. Whenever I tried to talk to Keith about her, he would shut me down. He would say, Mom is old and she has some really conservative ideas. You don't have to take her seriously. She means no harm. Are you kidding me, Keith? You are not the one on the receiving end of her insults. It's humiliating and exhausting. I can't take her words anymore. Relax, you are overreacting. Mom can be cranky sometimes. I'll try to talk to her about her behavior. You have to be a little patient with her. Maxine was right. Guys, Keith rarely took my side. Yes, he did defend me against Elena at times, but mostly it was me whom he asked to compromise. I was getting tired of his behavior. What's worse was the fact that I was paying a huge chunk of the household expenses because Keith was supporting Elena with his small salary. I felt disrespected and humiliated even after doing so much for Elena. The worst of Elena's behavior was yet to come. It was a little over a year after we got married. Both me and Keith found 2 job opportunities that would increase our pay by a lot. We both got shortlisted for our respective positions and needed to go through an interview process to get the job. Unfortunately, Keith's interview was delayed due to some reason, but my interview was scheduled to happen shortly. Elena absolutely hated it. She said, Carrie, you seriously can't be thinking of taking the job. That would not be good at all. You don't need to go to the interview. Why would I not take the job? It would raise my salary so much. I will finally have the job of my dreams. You are a married woman, Carrie. You can't think about your job all the time. If you get the job, you will earn way more than Keith. How can you even think of earning more than your husband? That is so disrespectful. Mom, that is ridiculous. I'm so proud that Carrie has got an amazing offer. I want her to get the job. This is her dream job. I don't care if she earns more than me. Don't be so naive, Keith. She will start to financially abuse you. She will lose all respect for you and treat you like explicit. Plus, she will try to get rid of me. Don't let her go for this interview. I'm no one to stop her, Mom. I'm telling you that I don't mind all these things. You are overreacting a little. Leave her be, Mom. Alina, I have had enough of you treating me like this. It can't happen again. What I do with my life is none of your business. You don't have the right to comment on it. Alina never backed down from her demands. She tried to do everything in her power to dissuade me from attending the interview. She even tried to say that I should not attend the interview to support Keith because he couldn't interview at his job. By the time my interview dates grew near, I had gotten very, very careful. I knew Alina would try to mess things up. Just on the day of the interview, I saw Alina walk into our study right after I left the room with my CV. Back then, I thought nothing of it. I was excited for my interview, and also because Keith had finally gotten a call for his interview. It was happening on the very same day. Keith didn't tell Elena because he wanted it to be a surprise when he got the job. However, things came crashing down when I came home after my interview. Keith was looming super sad. I said, "Keith, what's wrong? Why do you look so sad? Did something happen at the interview? Carrie didn't get the job. Just look at my damn CV. They took one look at it and rejected me." "What are you talking about, Keith? You have the perfect CV. There is no way they were not impressed." Just then, Keith handed me his CV. I was shocked, guys. It wasn't his CV at all. It had my name and gender written on it, but everything mentioned in the CV was wrong. It painted me in a bad light and didn't contain a single word of my actual achievements. I had no idea who made this and how it got mixed with Keith's CV. I could see why bringing in something like this can create a bad impression and result in rejection. Keith was devastated. He said, "I don't understand this, Carrie. How the hell did this happen? This is not your CV. Either it has a bunch of awful things written on it. It can't be that I took yours instead. No, you didn't take mine, Keith. I had an original CV for the interview. That's how I got the job. If I had taken the one you have, they would have never given me the job. This is so bizarre, Carrie. I'm devastated that I lost my job because of this stupid thing. I need to know how this happened. It's killing me from inside seeing Keith in this mental state. It absolutely crushed me. It was true that Keith was looking forward to the job. It pained him to lose it. I was also pretty confused about the fake CV Keith had. And then it clicked in my head. It must have been Alina who had placed Keith's CV. She had no idea Keith had an interview. She was trying to jinx my interview and failed. Immediately I was filled with anger, but I kept my cool. I needed to show Keith what Alina actually is. So I said, "I think you should ask Elena about this, Keith. I'm sure she will have some interesting information for you." "What do you mean, Carrie? What does Mom have to do with this?" "Well, I'm sure you remember how she didn't want me getting the job. I have a feeling she was trying to get my CV replaced. So she printed out a fake CV that would destroy my chances of getting the job. No. Mom would never do that. She didn't even know I had an interview today. Exactly, Keith. She didn't know you had the interview today. If she had known, she would have been careful. I actually saw her sneaking into the office with a file in her hand. By then, I already had my CV in my bag. I guess she looked at your file cover and thought it was mine. Keith was initially in denial that his mom had something to do with it. But slowly, with my explanations and recounting of the morning's incidents, Keith was getting suspicious. It was becoming apparent to him that Alina may have had something to do with this. He decided to call her. "Mom, come here right now. I need to speak to you." "Keith, what's wrong? Why are you shouting so much?" "I'm coming." "Did you mess with my CV? Answer me truthfully." "What? No. Why would I do that? What CV are you even talking about? I don't understand." "My CV, Mom. The one I was supposed to take to my interview today. What the hell did you do with it?" "I didn't do anything to your CV. I didn't even know you had an interview today. Carrie was the one who had an interview." At this point, Keith narrowed his eyes at Alina and began to suspect her words. I could tell that he was connecting the dots in his head. He immediately asked her, "Mom, tell me the truth. Did you tamper with Carrie's CV? I already know what you did. There is no point in lying." "I don't know what you're talking about. I would do no such thing." "Keith, Elena knew I had an interview. She didn't replace your CV knowingly. She wanted to swap mine and ruin my interview. That's exactly why your CV had my name and gender in the file. Mom, do you have any idea what you have done? You freaking replaced my CV and cost me a good job. I failed the interview because of you, Mom. What the hell is wrong with you?" It finally dawned on Alina that she had ended up committing a big mistake. Instead of swapping my file, she accidentally swapped Keith's file. Alina ended up costing Keith his interview. When she realized that, she immediately started to cry. She said, "Keith, listen to me. This was all a mistake. I never intentionally had you like that. I had dared you into rescheduling. I thought you thought the only Carrie had an interview today, and despite my warnings, you still tried to ruin her chances of getting the job. Why are you so upset about that, Keith? Your wife should not be earning more than you. If she owns more and becomes the breadwinner, no one will call you a man. She will take control of you and kick me out of your life. I did this for your good. You need to stop making yourself the martyr. Have you no shame, Carrie? You cost your son his new job. He was so excited to join this company. You ruined his chance. This was because you couldn't start seeing me having a better job than him. Shut up, Carrie. This is all your fault. If you hadn't tried to get a better job than Keith, I wouldn't have had to do this. There would be no mishap. Okay, if this is all Carrie's fault, I told her not to go for the interview. I had no choice but to stop her. I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted her to get rejected." Keith was already very, very pissed at this point. Hearing Alina's nonsense just set him off even more. All the times I have complained to him, Keith had never been this angry at his mom. He finally understood how cruel and manipulative she could be. Keith just snapped and tore into her. "Lena," he said, "enough is enough. Mom, me and Carrie brought you into our house and didn't take a penny from you. This is how you repay us. Have you no shame, Mom? You have to understand, Keith, Carrie is responsible for this. She constantly pushed my buttons and forced me to do these things. She wants me out of your life. That's why she's blaming everything on me. My wife selflessly took you in without any complaints. You are the one who started all the trouble. For months, I ignored her concerns and took your side. I protected you because you are my mom. Now I can see that I did wrong. I should have kicked you out sooner. How can you say that, Keith? You can't just kick out your mom. I know you can never do it. You're just angry at me. You don't mean this. Yes, I meant every word I said. Starting today, you are never welcome in our house again. We will formally give you a month's notice. After that, I don't care where you go. You won't live with us. No, 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 Keith. You can't do this. Carrie, you witch, you've destroyed my life. You're taking away my son. I will never forgive you. Don't blame me, Alina. You are the one who brought this upon yourself. I did not instigate anything. You destroyed your relationship with Keith all by yourself. You must be so happy. This is making you very happy, isn't it? I will not let you go, you witch. Saying that, Alina lunged at me and tried to grab me by my hair. She was already pulling at my scalp when Keith intervened and got her off me. He then started to scream at Alina and went ape on her. It got so bad that Alina started to cry uncontrollably. Keith actually threatened to press charges against her and kicked her out instantly. Alina didn't make a fuss because she was scared that Keith would really call the police. When Alina finally left the house in her car, Keith started to calm down. But after his anger subsided, he immediately burst into tears. I guess his frustration with the interview and with Elena really made him break down. Through his tears, he said, "I'm so sorry, Carrie. I really should have listened to you. I almost cost you your job because I didn't want to upset my mom. She just showed me how wrong I was about her. She attacked you for God's sake. I don't know how to face you. I'm ashamed. Say that Keith or this is on Alina. Please don't blame yourself for what happened. I'm not happy with being validated. It came at the expense of your job. I rather wish it was me who lost the interview. No, I'm glad it was me. I was the one at fault. I should have kicked Mom out sooner. Don't worry, Carrie. After today, I won't ever allow Mom into our lives. She is unhinged and a toxic woman. I am done with her. He promised me that Elena would never come near us again. Plus, he told me that from now on, he would make more contributions to our household. He would be cutting Elena off financially as well. He said that it was unfair I paid most of our bills to allow him to help someone who hated me. Keith wanted no contact with Elena anymore. Elena did try to get in touch with Keith. It was mostly her begging for forgiveness. She initially sent me some threatening texts. After I sent her a warning about calling the police, she backtracked and begged me for forgiveness as well. She knew that she was stuck in a deep hole. No thanks to her, she was staying at Maxine's place, who knew all about her antics, and she was making her get a job to support herself. She had no intention of having her mom freeload on her. Maxine would get her revenge too. It's only a matter of time. It's been over 8 months since the incidents. Maxine has unceremoniously kicked out Elena after she pestered her to look after her. She was banned from her house, and her husband told Alina never to return. Alina was forced to move to a different state to some relative we barely know. I sent them a nice email about Alina's antics. Yes, I found the email through Maxine. Like I said, Maxine is a sweetheart. Our families have gotten much closer now that Alina is not here with her favoritism. Keith has also apologized to Maxine for disregarding her feelings. They are now very close, and we hang out regularly. Keith has also enrolled in college so he can get a master's degree. It would help him get a better job in his field. With my current income, we are having no trouble with money. Keith has always supported me to chase my dreams. It was only fair that I do the same for him. Alina's departure has actually made our lives better, and I hope it stays that way for the years to come.
Aid. My mother passed out. She seemed to be in discomfort. When I picked up the phone on my day off, I heard Hannah, the daughter of my senior coworker Sarah, crying. Wait a minute. I'm on my way now. I hurried as quickly as I could to Sarah's place. I walked over and called out to her, but she didn't answer. I called for an ambulance because I could take it no more. Everything will work out. Soon, we'll be in the hospital. Hannah's little shaking hand felt chilly in my own. I'm Chris, and I'm 31 years old. I'm a salesperson for Rivertech Industrial Parts, a business that sells parts for machinery. I've always been seen as a serious person who never backs down from a challenge. However, the truth is that, as a salesperson, I haven't been successful in closing any significant deals. I sometimes get discouraged and question whether hard work is sufficient on its own. But I don't give up and keep going. Sarah, my senior colleague, is a major contributor to it. She is only 2 years older than me, at 33. Clients have a great deal of faith in Sarah, since she is a composed and accomplished salesperson. I developed a great deal of respect and admiration for her after witnessing her in action, using a variety of strategies and managing clients with poise. I've grown to cherish the time I get to talk to Sarah during breaks. She manages even the most challenging clients with ease and maintains her composure. She is an incredible mentor. Before I realized it, my feelings for Sarah had progressed beyond simple admiration. However, because she is married, I can only look up to her from a distance. My feelings would never be returned, even if they were to develop farther than that. Just being by her side, even if it's just at work, is sufficient for me. At the absolute least, though, I want to get better at my job and catch up to her. I've been putting a lot of effort into improving myself. I don't mind staying up late, actively trying to increase sales, and constantly trying to improve. Sarah grinned and remarked, "Chris, you've been working really hard lately," after noticing my effort. "You should teach me." "No, Sarah, I should be the one learning from you. I'm inspired by the work you do." I'm grateful. Making sure our clients appreciate working with us is what I constantly try to concentrate on. They will want to return to us if they do. I see. If you keep that in mind, I believe you can win over any client. I was always amazed by her tremendous sense of purpose in her job. Knowing someone like her made me feel proud. Chris, with all this overtime, don't you have trouble finding time to go on dates? Sarah asked me one day. That is not a concern for you. I don't have a romantic partner. Oh, I see. As she appeared somewhat uncomfortable, I went on. Well, I'm pretty much just a boring guy who's only good at being serious. It is really vital to be serious. It also manifests in the way you approach your work. Someone will value your seriousness one day. You think so? Yeah, if you ask me, being serious is the best quality in a husband. I didn't fully comprehend Sarah's statement that the best quality was being serious until much later. Sarah and I eventually began discussing personal matters. I even thought we were getting closer as our chats became more personal. Sarah, you're married, so it must be tough juggling work and everything else, right? Chris, I'm a single mother. I was surprised. I always thought Sarah was content with her marriage. However, learning that she had gone through a divorce. Nevertheless, she continued working as usual in spite of everything. I was unable to recognize the extent of Sarah's struggles because of this. I was embarrassed that I hadn't realized. The feelings I had been suppressing appeared to suddenly explode all at once. Sarah said to me, "Hannah is the name of my daughter. She is now 9 years old. She is incredibly intelligent for her age, even though I am her mother. Her grin alone gives me the strength to face each day. I am able to continue moving forward because of Hannah." Her face, radiating the strength and tenderness of a mother, looked so beautiful. I found myself even more captivated by Sarah. That's why I was so determined to succeed at work and produce results as quickly as possible. I actively emulated Sarah's methods, absorbing every bit of sales knowledge I could. I started to think that once I achieved some real success, I'd finally be able to confess my feelings to her. My feelings grew stronger each day, swelling more and more. It got to the point where I could barely handle them myself. One day, with a slightly clouded expression, Sarah confided in me, "I only got divorced recently. It's tough being a single mom." Although Sarah clearly had personal struggles, she never let them show at work. She never mixed her personal life with her job. Despite the difficulties she was facing, she kept giving her all. I found myself wondering if I should step further into her personal life. Then one day, Sarah handed me a book, saying, "Chris, you should read this. It really helped me with my sales, and I'm sure you'll find it useful too." With that, she passed me the book. "Thank you. I'll borrow it." That night, I stayed up reading it. I read it over and over, determined to make sure I fully understood it, vowing to apply it to my work just as Sarah had. The techniques in the book were invaluable for my future in sales. I immediately put the techniques from the book into practice without hesitation. As a result, I started to see my efforts pay off, with my performance gradually improving. My relationships with clients improved, and my sales performance started to rise. One day, I decided to return the book to Sarah at her home. I called her, saying, "Thank you so much for the book the other day. Thanks to you, my sales numbers are going up. I'd like to return the book now." "You can just bring it to the office," she said, but I couldn't let it go. I bought a cake from a newly opened shop that had great reviews and headed to her house. Sarah's house wasn't too far from my apartment. It was about a 15-minute walk. As I walked, lost in thought, I soon arrived at Sarah's home. I felt a bit nervous, but I took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. Finally, I pressed the doorbell. "Yes, who is it?" A sweet, cheerful voice answered. It was Hannah, Sarah's daughter, answering in her place. "I'm Chris from Sarah's office." "Mom, it's Chris." "Thank you, Hannah," I heard Sarah say through the door, and I couldn't help but smile. A moment later, the door opened. "Chris, thank you for going out of your way," Sarah said, welcoming me with a smile. Hannah peeked out from behind her. She looked just like her mom. "Nice to meet you, Hannah. I'm Chris. Thank you for always taking care of my mom. I can see why Sarah says you're so smart, even though you're only 9. I thought, she's such a confident and articulate kid. I'm the one who's grateful for all the help," Sarah said. When I said that, Hannah looked at Sarah and tilted her head with a smile, as if to say, "I told you so." The other day, she lent me a book. "Sarah, please enjoy this with Hannah," I said, handing a box of cake to Sarah. "Thank you. This is from that new cake shop, right?" "Yes. Hannah and I were just saying we wanted to try it sometime." "Great. Thanks so much, Chris." I watched the two of them with a smile. I suddenly wondered if Hannah's first impression of me was okay. But when I saw Hannah waving and saying, "Bye, Chris, take good care of my mom," okay, I felt relieved. "Bye, Hannah." I could feel the distance between Sarah and me getting closer, and it made my heart race. Talking to Sarah after work and our chats during breaks were becoming something I really looked forward to. "Chris, that cake was so good. Hannah loved it and told me to thank you." I'm so glad she enjoyed it. She looked so happy. I wish you could have seen her cheeks practically bursting with joy. Seeing Sarah's happy face made me feel happy too. "Let's keep doing our best together," she said with a smile. I found myself even more drawn to Sarah, feeling my feelings for her growing stronger by the day. But I could tell that she was struggling to balance work and family. I was starting to really want to support Sarah, a single mom, with all my heart. Every time I saw that tired smile of hers, it looked like she was holding back tears. And each time, I thought, "Sarah, you don't have to push yourself so hard. It's okay to cry when things are tough. Cry if it helped you smile again tomorrow." These feelings were always locked inside my heart, but I genuinely wanted to protect that smile of hers. At the same time, I felt a strong desire to support not just her work, but her life too. One weekend, I got a call from Sarah. Sarah's calling me on her day off. I wonder what's going on. Feeling confused, I quickly answered the phone. Hello, it's Chris. Help, Mom collapsed. She looks like she's in pain. It was her daughter, Hannah, on the phone. What? I could hear her sobbing on the other end. Hannah, wait, I'm coming right now. Grabbing only my wallet and phone, I rushed to Sarah's house. After ringing the doorbell, a tearful Hannah opened the door. Chris, my mom is. I rushed inside and found Sarah unconscious. Sarah. I called her name, but she was unresponsive. Thankfully, she was still breathing. I immediately called for an ambulance and did my best to help by placing her in a recovery position. Before long, the ambulance arrived and I got in with Hannah. Her face was filled with worry. No matter how mature she seems, she's still just 9 years old. Her only parent had collapsed, and she must have been terrified and overwhelmed with fear. I gently held her hand and said, Hannah, it's going to be okay. We're almost at the hospital. Her small hand was cold and trembling. Once Sarah was taken to the hospital, her condition stabilized, and it turned out not to be too serious. Hannah, your mom's going to be okay. Isn't that great? Yeah, Hannah said. She had stopped crying. Relieved, I sat with her in the hospital room, watching over Sarah as she rested. The whole time, Hannah never let go of my hand. Where am I? Sarah woke up, looking around in confusion. You're in the hospital. You collapsed at home. Hannah called me, and I came over and called an ambulance. Hannah did. Yes, Mom collapsed, so I used your phone to call Chris. I'm so glad you're awake, Mom. Hannah, you're so brave. Thank you, and I'm sorry for worrying you, Sarah said, stroking Hannah's head. Her eyes filled with tears. Then, turning to me, she said in a trembling voice, Thank you, Chris. The doctor said it was caused by exhaustion and stress. What happened? If you're comfortable, I'd like to help in any way I can. After thinking for a moment, Sarah slowly began to speak. You know I told you I'm divorced, right? Well, my ex-husband secretly made me a co-signer on his loans and then disappeared with the debt. I've been struggling to pay it off ever since, and it's made life incredibly hard. Each month, I tried reaching out to his family and friends, but no one knows where he is. I've been at a complete loss, but I had to keep going for Hannah's sake. That's why I've always believed being serious was the most important thing, because I watched how irresponsible my ex was. Hearing how difficult her life had been made my heart ache. I realized how much she had been enduring all this time while working so hard. My ex was addicted to gambling. Any money he earned, he blew it all instead of supporting us. The debt just kept piling up. Eventually, he even tried to take the money I'd saved for household expenses. No matter what I said, he wouldn't listen. I couldn't bring myself to divorce him, though, because he's Hannah's father. But one day, Hannah said to me, Mom, I don't have a dad. He never plays with me, and when I see him, he just yells at me. I only want to be with you, Mom. Just the two of us. Please, please divorce him. That gave me the courage to finally leave him, but I never thought I'd still be haunted by him after the divorce. As Sarah recounted the awful details of her ex-husband's behavior, I felt a wave of anger rise up inside me. Thinking about how Hannah must have felt when she said those words to her mom filled me with sorrow. I looked at Sarah and said, Sarah, is there any way I can help you outside of work? But she drew a line, saying, I don't want to trouble you any more than I already have. Chris, at that moment, I remembered Hannah's small hand. She was so worried about her mother that her hand was cold and trembling. That's why I truly wanted to help both Sarah and Hannah. I felt a deep ache in my heart, but I resolved that I wouldn't give up. One day, Sarah said to me, Chris, I want to thank you for everything you've done. If you're free, could you come over this weekend? Hannah really wants to thank you too. Her unexpected invitation filled me with excitement. I never imagined I'd have this kind of opportunity. I'm sure it was Hannah who made this happen. I felt genuinely grateful to her. On the weekend, when I rang the doorbell at Sarah's house, a cute voice responded, "Coming." Hannah opened the door and said, "Chris, thank you so much for the other day. Come on in." She took my hand with hers, her small one guiding me inside. "Mom's cooking right now, so just wait a bit." "Okay, sure," I said. "I made you a letter and a drawing, Chris. Here you go." Hannah handed them to me. The letter was in a cute envelope, and on the front, in her handwriting, it said, "To Chris." I could tell she must have worked really hard on it. Hannah, looking a bit shy, said, "Read it when you get home, okay?" The drawing she gave me had her in the middle, holding hands with me and Sarah. "Hannah, you're really good." When I complimented her, she beamed with joy. Just then, Sarah said, "Chris, welcome. Thank you again for everything the other day. I was thinking we could go out to a restaurant, but I'm sorry. I hope this is okay instead." She motioned to the table. "Please eat as much as you like." The table was filled with freshly cooked dishes. As I enjoyed the meal, I said, "Sarah, this is really delicious." Savoring her homemade food, I once again asked, "Please let me know if there's anything I can help with." But she firmly replied, "We're just coworkers. I really appreciate everything you did, but this and that are different matters." Despite her gratitude, Sarah was determined to maintain some distance between us. Meanwhile, Hannah had grown attached to me and even started saying, "Chris, you're like a dad." Her words caught me off guard. Every time I thought about Hannah, I remembered her small and trembling hand. I truly wanted to protect and support that little hand. When I got home, I immediately opened Hannah's letter. It read, "Dear Chris, thank you for coming when my mom collapsed. Thank you for holding my hand all the way to the hospital. I'm really glad you were there, Chris. Because you came so quickly, my mom was saved. Please keep taking care of her from now on." It looked like she had just learned some spellings, as the word for hospital seemed a bit difficult for her to write. But her feelings shone through in every word. I found myself reading the letter over and over again, but the words started to blur. I realized I was crying. "Hannah, thank you for such a beautiful letter," I whispered. At that moment, I made a renewed vow to help both of them, even if my feelings went unreturned. It didn't matter. I just wanted to help them because I wanted them to keep smiling always. Around that time, my boss, Tyler, began plotting against Sarah out of jealousy for her success. She's just a divorced woman, and yet she keeps landing all these contracts. I heard from a private investigator that she's stuck with her ex-husband's debt. No way am I going to let her keep doing whatever she wants. "Just wait and see," they said. Tyler gave a sly smile as he said that. This was later revealed by a senior member of the sales team who had been under his command. Tyler began spreading malicious rumors by exploiting Sarah's personal issues. "Have you heard about Sarah?" "Yeah, I heard she's got a huge debt. They say that's why she's using her charms to close deals. I didn't think she was like that. Kind of disappointing, right? I used to look up to her as a strong career woman. Maybe that's why her marriage fell apart. Her husband couldn't handle it. Yeah, I wouldn't want a wife like that either." The sales team was full of whispers. Gossip once started tends to snowball in all the wrong directions. Did you hear that the recent contract was originally Tyler's, but the client requested Sarah instead? Apparently, she used her charm to win him over. Is it really worth going that far just to land a contract? Well, she's divorced and in debt, so maybe she needs to do that to survive. It's awful, isn't it? Maybe being divorced has made her desperate. The rumors were relentless. Of course, this eventually reached Sarah. "Sarah, Don't pay attention to those rumors, I said. Thank you, Chris, she said weakly. She was becoming increasingly isolated at work. The stress weighed heavily on her, though she maintained a calm facade. I could tell she was nearing her breaking point. Knowing she had collapsed before, I was constantly worried about her. I vowed to protect both Sarah and Hannah, and I became even more cautious of Tyler's schemes. I decided to gather evidence to expose Tyler's plot to bring Sarah down, but his schemes were clever, and finding solid proof wasn't easy. With little progress to show for my efforts, I thought, there's got to be evidence somewhere. I won't give up until I find it. Amidst all this, Hannah suddenly showed up at my office, catching me off guard. Hannah, what are you doing here? I asked. Mom hasn't been herself lately, she said. She seems really troubled. She's been talking in her sleep, saying things like, "It wasn't me who took out the loan. Why won't anyone believe me?" I think someone at work is saying that about her, so I came to explain. I don't want her to suffer anymore because of that awful person. I understand how you feel, Hannah, but I don't think that's a good idea, I replied. Why not? She asked. If you speak up, people might say your mom is using you, and that could hurt her even more. But what should I do then? Her pure-hearted concern moved me deeply. The truth is, I was raised by a single parent too. There was no way I could stand by and leave Hannah, also being raised by just one parent, without doing something. Hannah, I have an idea. What is it? You love your mom, right? Yeah, I love her so much, Hannah said with a big, carefree smile. How about we work together to protect your mom with you, Chris? Yes, with me. But this has to be our secret. Do you think you can keep it? Yeah, I can keep the promise with you. And so, Hannah and I formed a secret alliance. I started thinking of ways to support Sarah more effectively. I threw myself into my work even harder and began to consistently improve my sales performance. Man, Chris has been on fire lately. He used to rank below me, but now he's totally surpassed me, and I can't even catch up. Right? He was always serious, but his numbers were never that great. I guess all that dedication is finally paying off. My efforts started gaining attention within the company, and my reputation grew. At the same time, I discreetly reached out to Tyler's clients. I was trying to catch any sign of his wrongdoing. Eventually, I discovered that Tyler had been involved in shady deals with one of his clients, Matthew. I began monitoring Tyler's actions both inside and outside the company, preparing to expose his misconduct. Meanwhile, I knew I couldn't forget to be there for Sarah, who was still feeling isolated at work. One day, I finally obtained proof that Tyler and Matthew had been inflating invoices for fraudulent claims. Armed with this critical evidence, I headed to the company's higher-ups. Excuse me, I'm Chris from sales. Yes, we've been expecting you. So, what's this about? Are you aware that Tyler from the sales department has been colluding with a client, Matthew, to inflate invoices and defraud the company? I revealed Tyler's scheme to the executives. What? Please take a look at this data. This is the undeniable proof. Call Tyler in here immediately. Tyler was summoned to the office in a hurry. Tyler, what's the meaning of this? Explain yourself. The moment he saw the data, fear washed over his face. Oh, well, this is. He fumbled to explain, but the shock left him unable to offer any defense. To think someone in this company would stoop so low. This is a serious blow to our reputation. Do you understand the gravity of this situation? You will face severe consequences. Prepare yourself. Tyler collapsed on the spot, realizing the gravity of his downfall. News of the incident spread quickly throughout the company. Did you hear about Tyler? Unbelievable what he did, right? It's true, and you know Tyler was just jealous of Sarah and spread all those lies about her. So we were just dancing to Tyler's tune without realizing it. We really wronged Sarah. Yeah, Tyler lost all credibility in the company and left before any formal punishment could be handed down. Sarah, I'm so sorry. We believed everything Tyler said and ended up doubting you. It's true that I have debt, but I've never used my looks to land deals. Of course, I always aim to build good relationships with clients, but that's just being professional. Sarah gave a little chuckle. Sarah, from now on, be careful not to believe rumors so easily, okay? It's disrespectful to the clients as well. Thank you so much. After that incident, Sarah gradually regained her standing in the company. Chris, thank you. It's all thanks to you. Oh, I didn't really do that much. Don't be so modest. If it weren't for you, I might have had to leave the company. She said this with a fresh, relieved smile. From that moment on, I felt that our bond was growing even deeper. As I achieved success in the company, I also renewed my resolve to continue supporting both Sarah and Hannah. Sarah thanked me again by cooking a homemade meal. Hannah whispered in my ear, I'm keeping our secret, Chris. What? What are you talking about? With Chris, I just thanked Chris for helping my mom, Hannah said playfully. She was becoming more attached to me, and I felt that the bond between the three of us was getting even stronger. At some point, Sarah began to realize how much I meant to her. She later told me this. We started helping each other both in our professional lives and personally. One day, I told Sarah, I want to build a future with you and Hannah. Let's get married. Chris, that day I realized how irreplaceable you are to me. But I'm a divorced single mom, and yet you still want to be with me and Hannah. Thank you. Sarah was deeply moved by my words and decided to take that step forward with me. Hannah was our little Cupid. If it weren't for her, I don't think I would have gotten this close to Sarah. Finally, I was able to hold that small hand of Hannah's. Hannah, the picture you drew has come true. I was once again filled with gratitude for her presence in my life. We had a small wedding, inviting close friends and family. Sarah hesitated since it was her second wedding, but I told her, I want to see you in a wedding dress. I want to see Mom in her dress too, and I want to wear one. And I want to see Dad in a tuxedo. Hannah, I felt such love for Hannah when she called me Dad, and I hugged her tightly. She whispered excitedly in my ear, Our secret promise will keep going, Dad. The wedding was only possible because of Hannah. I thought to myself, she really is our little angel. About 6 months after the wedding, I invited Sarah and Hannah to go on a picnic. Growing up with just one parent, I had always dreamed of going on a family picnic like this. Hannah had been looking forward to it for weeks, saying, It's been so long since our last picnic. I'm so excited. I made a vow to always protect Sarah and Hannah, doing everything in my power to keep their smiles bright. Chris, you like this, don't you? You made this for me, as Sarah and I exchanged these happy words. Hannah watched us with a joyful smile. After that, Sarah and I built a relationship where we supported each other both at work and at home. I continued to achieve great results in sales, becoming her reliable right-hand man. Both Sarah and I earned promotions, and soon people started saying, they're not just a perfect couple, they're the power couple of the sales department. The company's performance kept improving as well. I felt more motivated than ever to keep giving my best. Sometimes people are driven to work hard, even at personal sacrifice, for the sake of someone else. I believe that's what love is. I'm incredibly happy to have shown my love to Sarah and Hannah. In return, Sarah showed me her deepest gratitude and love, and our little angel, Hannah, always gave me the brightest, most joyful smile. I vowed once again to cherish Sarah and Hannah and to build a happy, loving family together.